Hello, everyone. Hello, so we are 10 on the dot. Yes, we wish to keep to time. Can you hear me? Hey, Rita, Ndidi.
Hi,
can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can, absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Hello.
Thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Okay, so
Absolutely.
let's get going. So I'll take the welcome address right now.
Okay.
I want to welcome all of us to this very first of its kind convention, Homeschool Africa Convention 2020. My name is ZOB, and I partner with Parents on Maximizing Children's Potentials. I am also the founder of the Home Educators Academy, Network and Academy. So, which is an initiative, the Homeschool Africa Convention is an initiative of the Home Educators Network and Academy. So today we're going to have a swell time. Today and tomorrow, we're going to have a swell time. Now, one thing that's always the question, people always want to know, how can I do homeschooling without being stressed? How can I do homeschooling and also have my life? How can I do this? So we have come together to put this amazing conference where we can come together once a year, encourage ourselves, support ourselves, and also gain knowledge for the journey. You realize that having support is so important when you're doing this, because it looks most of the time that you're like a square peg in a round hole around your people. So you need that support. So that's why we came together to do this. All right. So it's going to be an amazing time. We are also live streaming on YouTube. So you want to share the links on YouTube. Presently it's live streaming on YouTube. So please share and share and share the links to your friends and to your family. All right, so we are having about 5 speakers today. The first speaker is going to be Ndidi Adekunle, my friend, and she's going to be doing justice to her topic, homeschooling and marriage, pros, cons, and it's going to be an amazing time. I trust her. Okay, so let's just get right into the meat of today, which is going to be coming from her. We have other speakers. We have Blessing 40K. Then we have Debbie Paul. Then we have myself and Pam Banhill today. All right, so we just get straight up to the meat of today, which is homeschooling and marriage. Sorry, homeschooling and marriage, the pros and the cons. All right, so I will be introducing her right now. Okay, so let me share. Oh, I forgot. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'll be introducing Ndidi Olamide Adekunle. She is the Lord's handmaiden, as she likes to be remembered. Okay? And she is a woman hungry for the truth of God. She's also a loving wife to a missionary evangelist at the Newman World Outreach, mother to 3 growing kids, and a consultant for education, for the education industry in her country, Nigeria. An advocate for intentional parenting and learning to learn. She chairs the education consulting brand, Nurture Kids. She has intensively homeschooled her 3 children, 11, 10, and 8, off and on, and of course, their upbringing, and experienced amazingly rewarding as well as fulfilling benefits of homeschooling. Now, to also add to that, Ndidi, I've known Ndidi for about, I would say 7 years now, or 6 years, yes. And then, you know, when I met her, we just clicked. It was such an exciting one, you know, in those days where you hardly saw anyone who was homeschooling. So it clicked so much, and I was so excited. And it's something that developed to 6 the ship. And I'm so happy to speak to us. Over to you, Ndidi Olamide Adekunle.
Oh, hi. Hi, Z. Real nice to be here. I can't believe we're here. We've had such, an upheaval journey with homeschooling. I'm very glad that you mentioned Z, how we met. At the time we met, we were alone. We were, like a fish out of water. You know, there were 3 of us actually. That was
me.
Is
it just me? I can't hear you well.
Oh, you can?
I don't know whether it's just me.
Can everybody else hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can hear you well.
I can hear you.
Who can
Rita,
hear?
Can you hear her?
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Yes, you can hear her.
Okay. All right. So, as I was saying, at the time we met,
please
we
go
were
on.
like fish out of water.
Please do go on.
Okay.
Please do go on.
So
go
at the time we met, I'm going on. At the time we met, we were like 3 fish out of water. There was me, there was Z, and then there was a 3rd person, Olufumike. Incidentally, she's also going to be here on this program. We were just like fish out of water. There was nobody else around us doing homeschooling, but we knew that there were a few people here and there. We just couldn't place exactly who they were, where they were, and all of that. So between the 3 of us, we formed a bond. We will share tips. We would take videos of what we're doing. We became our accountability buddies, if you know what I mean. So, and it was awesome, and over time we grew, we shared resources. It was intensive. We were passionate. We didn't care whose ox was God. We were just doing our thing because we believed heavily in it. Okay. So, and over time we kept saying, there are other people who need to do this thing. There are many reasons why we have to homeschool. There are many people are asking questions. People are in pain, about their children's education. We all know that the Nigerian education system is so. How do we come in? A friend of mine the other day, I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day on WhatsApp, and she said to me, "Look, Ndidi, I'm considering homeschooling." I said, "What? Why would you? Why? You need to give me your why. What's your reason?" Because I wasn't sure. She wanted me to encourage her. I needed to know if she was at that place yet. She said to me, schools are resuming, and I'm dreading the confrontations I know are bound to come about as soon as schools resume. I'm dreading the confrontation with teachers, with schools. I'm just dreading those confrontations because, there would always be the ideal. And then in our Nigerian education system, unfortunately, there would always be, maybe not always, but for now, we're all working the system, and not everybody else is working towards that ideal. But for now, there's still so many things left to be desired, so much left to be desired. What do you do as a parent? Do you live with it, or do you do something about it? And in doing something about it, first we start to talk about intentional parenting. In other words, you work with your school, with the school, whatever it is that they're not that is not up to par. You work to meet up, with the vagaries, with the gaps, okay, and make up for the things that are missing in the school where your children attend. But even a better option is to homeschool. Okay, let me just take it all. Let me just enough with it. Let me just take it up all together by myself. But you see, I am going to be speaking about Z, for instance, and a number of us here are full-time homeschoolers. I have done full-time, but presently my children are being schooled. My children are in school, so it's not a full-time thing anymore for me. But now and then, I'm very open to, pulling them out to for certain interventions. If I see anything that is a problem for me, I'm very open to, pulling them out. It's just that, which is part of what we're going to be talking here today. My husband believes, that, this thing that Nigerians are not satisfied with the Nigerian education system and everybody just runs. Everybody leaves the country and just runs. We don't believe in that, and would like to be able to exemplify, what you should do, how you can stay. Why not stay and work on it? You can still stay and work on it. You can still stay and do something about it. At the most, you homeschool. Okay, so everybody is looking to leave the country, even people who do not have the wherewithal to leave the country. Everybody is looking to leave the country, and some of them are leaving the country and are not exactly comfortable where they are, but they're having to live with it. When you have options, there are so many options. We cannot continue to streamline ourselves and say, if it's not this, there's nothing else to do. There's so many options, and we need to be able to harness all our options, to make our decisions. Okay, so I would like to quickly share from my my screen. Okay. Oh, Z, did you disable attendee? Did you disable that?
Okay.
Can you enable that, please?
No, I would permit you now. Just in a bit.
Okay. All right. So here we are now, in with the COVID-19. The journey has, we've come through so much. We've come through that time when they used to make fun of us and say, what are these ones doing? There's nothing I've not heard. I've heard from who does she think she is? Does she think her children are better than ours, than those others whose children are in regular school? I've heard that. I've also heard, what's rubbish homeschooling? How can it be as good as schooling? How can it be as good as regular, the regular school system? I've heard all sorts. So in one breath, they're looking down on you. Yeah, they think, but they haven't really until they come close to see what you're doing, or until they meet your children and see the results of your own efforts. Then they start to deal with it within themselves. They walk away dealing. You can see the expression on their faces. They're dealing with it. There's that school of thought. Then there's this school of thought. Is she trying to say she's better off than us all who have our kids in the regular school system? It has nothing to do with anybody. It's your decision, to do it or not to do it, to homeschool or not to homeschool. You see, this life, we have to live life with our own convictions. Okay, so because at the end of the day, you're going to live in your own skin. So if you know that for very many reasons why, have you enabled it, Z?
Yes, I've done that.
Okay. If you know that for many reasons why we homeschool, that you can deal, that it's okay for you. You can't you manage what you get, which is you manage what you get, which is pretty much not up to par.
Yes.
Excuse me for a minute.
That's true.
That you manage what you get, which is pretty much not good enough for a lot of people. If it's good enough for you, fine. But if it's not good enough for you, are you going to manage it and leave your children half-baked? When they come out, they're less educated, than you are. They're less educated than, the kind of education that you got. And I keep telling people that, you see, the best thing, we can give our children everything, but the very best thing we can give our children is us. Some of us are well educated. We've been to very good schools. We have very many abilities. We have very many competences. There's so many things we know. We're intellectual. We're cerebral. There's so many things we know how to do. We understand life. There's so many things we know. But we when we hand our children over in school, in some of the schools, we don't have, hands that are like us, to enrich our children. Can we see the slides? Can we
Yes,
see the
yes,
slides, please?
yes, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we don't have hands as good as us, as competent as ourselves to teach our children, to impart into our children. And in a whole day, how many hours they spend in the school? They spend so many hours at school and very little time every day, daily, every day, 5 days a week. So, you only have 2 days a week, that if you're even available during the weekends. You only have weekends to spend time with your children. So your impartation is just so little in comparison with what the amount of time the school has, to spend with their children. So when you now compare it, they come away. A lot of the time you see your children and you know that, oh, I wish they knew this, I wish they knew that, based on the competencies that you have, or based on the understanding that you have of what an educated child should be like. Because that's a question where you ask ourselves when you want to homeschool. You ask yourself, what's a good education to me? What are the indices for a good education? What would I say? The indices for a good education? How would I recognize? What kind of child would I see? And I'll be impressed by whoever taught this child, or whatever school this child attends, or whatever a curriculum or education, sort of education that this child is receiving. What entails that quality? Okay, so when you start to ask yourself those questions, then you begin to compare. Let me give you an example. I'm prospecting a school for my children, and a few people point me in the direction of a particular school, and I begin to look out for children who attend that school, and I say to them, can I see your? First of all, you speak to them, and you don't exactly like what you don't exactly like their skills, their communication skills. You see that you see there's something not quite right there, and then you say to them, can I see your books? They show you their books, and their books are all disjointed. I mean, you check the first child's book, it's like that. Check the second child's book, is like that. You check another child's book from another home, it's like that. It gives you a picture what your child is going to be getting. You don't want a child who hands in a book and the book isn't tidy, because it speaks a lot about everything else, in the child's culture, in the child education culture. Yeah. So if a child hands in a book, a child is writing, and the child is not paying attention to neatness, and presentation, what the product looks like after he's done. Okay. If that is what the school is about, if that is how the school if that's how the school runs its system, then you begin to ask yourself, would I want my child to attend that sort of school? And peradventure, you don't find any place that meets that. Just a little bit of an example. There's so many other examples. People talk about critical thinking, critical reasoning. You go to a school, you ask them, what's your vision for your school? where do you see your children in the next 5 years, in the next 6 years? There are some schools who will say, all our children pass common entrance. I've heard that, and I went, what? All our children pass common entrance, and that is the vision you have for your school? Or all our children pass GCE. Okay, they pass GCE, they pass SSCE, and I'm like, are they supposed to fail those in the first place? I thought that was taken for granted. There are certain other things, that should come to play in a good school. Yes, in a good school, because if you do not, if you don't raise the bar, you will not perform. You will not perform as well. Okay, you just have to raise the bar so that when you perform, you know how to say, aim for the sky. So even if you fall on the rooftops or something like that. Okay, so basically that's what we see over here in Nigeria. Those are some of the reasons why we make the decision that no, would rather do it ourselves. Okay, now in the light of COVID-19 lockdowns, we know that before now, as I was saying, before now, we've had all manner of criticisms against homeschooling. But now, with the lockdowns, everybody, I say to people, I say, if you have a love for cockroaches, yes, and you just love cockroaches, you just, you like to study them, you like to research them, you like to collect them, and you continue to talk about it, you continue, let's say you begin to share about it online, and all of that. Everybody knows you're about cockroaches. In time, as ridiculous as it sounds, in time, you're going to find fellow cockroach lovers. You're going to find kin spirits, kin folk who love cockroaches just as much as you. Now COVID-19 is not only COVID-19, just with the lockdowns. All the children are at home. Every mother, and not only are the children at home, because holiday time children are at home, but this time around parents are also at home. The mother is at home, the father is at home. Grannies are at home, aunties are at home. So there you are, having to deal with the fact that if you ever criticize homeschooling, now you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to come to terms with it. You're going to have to begin to seek how to homeschool. Begin to ask those of us who've been doing it that you've been making fun of for a while. You begin to ask us now, how did you do it? How have you been doing it? You begin to take tips from here and there. You begin to Google, how do I homeschool? So there is no better time than now, really, to begin to talk about homeschooling, to talk about the issues of homeschooling, the wherewithals, of homeschooling. So I'm glad that we finally came to this place. Yes, I remember that at the time that Z started speaking about homeschooling, started coming out, because I remember then we used to say, come out with it. At the time she started to come out with it, a few other people were worried that I hope the government doesn't clamp down, or police doesn't become it doesn't become a thing of it doesn't become something against the law. But eventually she started, and as she started, she met other people who were in the same spot as she, and then gradually we there's a voice, there's a united voice on homeschooling. So of course the matter of the government is no longer an issue. It's no longer an issue. That brings us to the question whose is the child really? Whose is the child? Incidentally, if I'm going to be using the pictures I'm using. I'm just splashing pictures of homeschool pictures, stuff my children have been doing. Just excuse that, just to in case you're not sure whether this lady has homeschooled or not. Anyway, so we ask, whose is the child? Whose is the child? Is it the states or the parents? Is it the states? Is the child the states, or is the child the parents? Is it the schools or the parents? Then of course we ask, is it the father's child or is it the mother's child? Oh, the last bit, we know that a child is both for the father and the mother. The Bible says he created them male and female. He created them male and female. So if you even wonder about that, you think about Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ was born, excuse me if you're not a Christian, when Jesus Christ was born, in the genealogy of Jesus Christ, let's say Matthew, for instance, you will see that it speaks about Jesus's genealogy from Joseph's side and Jesus's genealogy from Mary's side. So there's no question whose child it is. It is both the father's child and the mother's child. In other words, you have to come together as one to craft your child's upbringing. You have to come together as one. It's not one party. It's not a thing for just one party. You have to come together as one to craft, bring your own ideas. The other person the mother brings her own ideas. The father brings his own ideas, and together you work together, to bring in, to groom your children, to nurture your children, to, so that at the end of the day, that child is a product of he and she. Okay. Then we'll go back to we're talking, is it the states or the parents? Does the child belong to the state or does the child belong to the parents? I'll say that again. Does the child belong to Nigeria or does the child belong to the parents? In which case, if the state says the child must study this, or the child must go to school now, or the child must do this now. Yes, is it, if the state makes a decision that you do not agree with as a parent, if they decide that the children, where they're teaching them LGBTQ values, and they're teaching them all manner of things that you do not agree with in the classroom, do you say, oh, the child is for the state, therefore whatever the state decides is okay? Or do you say no, and you make a protest, you stage a protest, or at the very most you pull your child out, you make a decision based on your own values? Yeah, that's one. Is it the states or the parents, or is it the schools or the parents? A lot of the time we push the responsibility of educating our children to the schools, but when there's a problem, The child bears your name. The school only has your child for so number of years. Sometimes even a teacher has a child for just 1 year at a time, or if it's a teacher that is sometimes maybe a few more years than that, if the teacher teaches other classes, or maybe if the teacher is moved to other classes, that still meets your child. Okay, that's if you get lucky. But half the time, the teacher gets to handle your child for just 1 year, and her responsibility is gone. That's if the responsibility is even hers solely. So the child bears your name. The child bears. There is no day that your child will be walking, around, and then they will say, "Oh, that was this person's student. Oh, that was this person's pupil." No, they will say, "This is this person's daughter. This is this person's son." So, having said that, there's something that, since we're Nigerian, we're majorly Nigerian listening on here today. There's something we usually say. We say there's something that a radio presenter very many years ago used to say. It's in pidgin English. So I'll just say, it says, "Not take eye, come out where you're picking deal." Then it says, "If you good now your own, no. If you bad now you make them so." For those of us who understand, who are Nigerian, we all understand that. If it's good, if it turns out well, it's yours. If it turns out badly, it is your fault. Okay, so that said, we'll move on to the next slide quickly. Aha, we did ask, we said, oh, that's my husband there. We did ask, we said, whose child is this? Is it the mother's child or the father's child? That brings us close to what the topic of the day, homeschooling, the marriage part of homeschooling. Yes, is it the father's child or the mother's child? And we said it takes two to tango. It takes, in this regard, it takes, he made them male and female. So it's a father and a mother. It takes a father and a mother to birth a child. By virtue of DNA, by virtue of DNA, and even by virtue of DNA, the fact that my husband, for instance, has had a certain DNA for a long time. He has had a certain characteristic running his family for a long time. I may not have that particular characteristic running in my own family, but the fact that he knows how to deal with that sort of thing, I would need his input when my child starts to show his side of the family. How do you people deal with this? I mean, that's just to play of words, but really, it takes two to birth a child. It takes two to birth a child. It takes two to grow a child. One shall chase 1,000 to. Before you prepare yourself, you prepare such things as the environment, the learning environment. What would it look like? What would the learning environment look like? How would you have to prepare the learning environment in such a way that it suits each child. Okay, such a way that it suits each child. Perhaps you begin to put into consideration the different children's learning styles, each of their learning styles, each of your children's learning styles, and then bring in materials, resources that will serve each child in their own learning style. Okay, so but you see, the major thing, as we know your preparation, the major one thing that is so important is the relationship between your husband and your wife. I mean, between the husband and the wife, the relationship between a husband and a wife, the relationship between mommy and daddy. It's been said, so much research has been done in this regard. It says children learn the best from a loving home environment. Now, that's taking it for granted that the home environment is loving. What if it's not loving? What if it's not loving? So how do we now take care of that part? Because a lot of the time we prepare for homeschooling, we prepare the home environment, but we forget to deal with the man with whom I'm assuming that most of us who are here today are female, but even if you're not, the spouse with whom you've made that child. Okay, we forget to deal with that part. So even if there's a relationship issue, or you may come into homeschooling or you may desire to homeschool your child, but your husband doesn't understand it. I mean, why would you homeschool? And then there's something else that we discovered, that if you're spending a lot of time, if you're homeschooling, chances are you're going to be spending a lot of time with your children, and someone is going to suffer. You're going to be spending a lot of time with your children, and somebody is going to suffer it. And that person will not be able to say to you, oh, you seem to love the children more than you love me. You seem to be spending a lot more time with the children more than you're spending with me. Because he's not speaking, you're about to hit a brick wall. You're most likely going to hit a brick wall someday, or even never. I'll give you certain examples. I watched a movie, real time, all those true life, movies, real time stories. So I watched the movie. This man, they had this couple had lovely children, and over the years the woman had given all of herself to the children, to bringing up the children, to nurturing the children, to making the children be the best of themselves. In the process, the man felt neglected, but he never said a word. Eventually, the children left home. After they left home, in that time, in that whole all of that time, when a number of years, 10, 12, 10, 20 years of nursing the children, of pouring, her whole self into the children's lives, her husband had felt neglected. So by the time the children left home, by the time the last child had left home, she was left alone with her husband, and they were strangers. They had become strangers. So they had to start to deal with that. But you see, there's another part, that bothers me. The part that in all our teaching, we also have to teach our children how to relate with our spouses, how to relate with their spouses, because you see, if no matter how high, how far your child reaches, in the earth, no matter how far your child reaches, no matter how far we train our children to reach for the stars, to reach farther than the skies, and then they end up in a marriage they do not know how to handle. In a marriage, they don't have the skills to handle, or they don't have the understanding, to handle. That will ultimately affect their career. It will ultimately affect whatever it is that they do, whatever it is that is their chosen vocation. I remember once I was talking to Z, and Z and I agreed that a lot of times there are things that we want to do, but our husbands may not be in agreement. How do we go about it? And what we decided, what we came to, was the fact that you take it to God in prayer. In other words, you take it you become intentional about it. I need this man to agree with me. You don't skirt off and ignore him. I need this man to agree with me about this matter. Okay, I need this man, and if he doesn't agree with you, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be at that point where he just doesn't agree with you, and you're not by God, you're not really you're supposed to tread softly if he hasn't agreed with you. Okay, but the best place to be is that place where he agrees with you. And there's nothing as nurturing as a home where a husband and a wife are in unity. There's nothing as nurturing as a home where a husband and a wife are in unity, with decision making, with it's beautiful by itself. Even if there are no fittings, there's something beautiful. At such a dinner table, there's something beautiful about such a family. That is terribly nurturing, and healthy, and wholesome for a child's upbringing. If two people who are both mommy and daddy come together, to nurture the children, in agreement, in one accord, can two work together except they be agreed? So if we're not dealing with this part, we're going to keep coming. We're going to keep having issues and not know what the problem really is. But okay, that brings me to a video I watched. I thought I could share, but it's about 20 minutes and it will take a lot of our time. So I thought, okay, I'll just share it. Maybe you look for it later on and watch it. It's called The Argument-Free Marriage. The Argument-Free Marriage by this lady, Fawn Weaver. When I saw the title, I was a bit upset. Like, what do you mean the argument-free marriage? Which marriage doesn't have an argument? But I listened to the lady. This was a lady who lost her husband. And at the time she lost her husband, she started to rethink all the time they spent together, and she wished he could come back, and she said to herself, if only you could come back, she wished she could come back, and then she could relive the time with him, in which case nothing else will matter but their time together. Nothing else will matter but they are working together. You see, at this point, I like to mention the fact that, you see, when we're talking about intentional parenting, we do so many things, we do so much for our children, intentionally, but a lot of time we forget that we're also supposed to be intentional about our husbands, intentional about our spouses. So as we work with our children, we also work with our spouses, not just for us, not just for our sakes, but the sake of our children. Not just for our sakes, not just for the sake of the spouses, but the sake of our children. But the sake of our children, understanding that everybody needs a loving home environment. Everybody needs a peaceful home environment. Yes. So I'd ask you to when we're done with this, at your own convenient time, you just, make a point of watching that video. It's awesome. You need to, when you watch, you understand some of what I'm talking about. So we said homeschooling and intentional parenting. A look at real-time university. Okay, there's a student I went to University of Port Harcourt. While at school, there was a young girl who she wrote an exam. She wrote an exam in economics. She was in my class, in economics, and I think she had a D. And then she said this is not her. When she saw it, she was surprised. This lady, she was supposed to be a first class or 2-1, I'm not sure now, candidate. Okay, so when she saw the D, she was taken aback, like, no, this is not my, this is not me. And then she tried to speak to the lecturer about it. The lecturer wouldn't hear of it. Then she called her parents, and her parents said, oh no, knowing their daughter. Her parents live in Enugu. Enugu is far from Port Harcourt. Yeah, her parents flew into Port Harcourt. I think she had about 2 days to go. Within 2 days, her parents flew into Port Harcourt and came to pay the lecturer a visit. By the time they saw the lecturer, the lecturer had no choice to give her another test. The lecturer said, well, now that you speak of it, now with your parents here, he had to, give it to her. For her parents to come all the way, there must be something about this girl. Okay, so what I'm going to do for you, because he was so sure that the lady, was talking rubbish. So he said to the parents, if you're, I'm going to do something here, and I'm going to give your child another test right here, right here, and she's going to prove to you. She will prove to all of us what she's capable of. By the time this girl was done with her, she gave her the papers. She started to write. By the time she was done, and he scored her, she had an A. She scored an A, as against the D that she saw, in her report. We don't want to know what transpired, but you see, what got to me in this story is intentional parenting. If her parents hadn't come, and that was how she was able to maintain the cause of her first class. She ended up graduating with her first class. If not, I'm not sure now, like I said, if it's a first class or a second class upper. But anyway, she made her good grades, that got her going in life. If for any reason she had missed out on that one, who knows, it could have happened again and again, and then she would have lost out on it. If her parents were not intentional parents. And the funny part of it is, not only did not one parent, two parents came at the same time to bombard this lecturer's office. Now, that is a typical example for me. I learned so much from that experience, from that story. That's a typical example for me of intentional parenting, on how we should work with our children to achieve the best for themselves. And set them up for a good life. Yes. Brings me to the question, my why, your why. What are your whys? What are your whys? What are your whys? Okay. What are my whys? What was the reason why I homeschool? Some of my reasons include interventions. Sometimes you see that we call them intervention in education circles. You find there's a problem somewhere, maybe a learning gap, something your child should have learned, or something your child should have learned better, or something your child should have learned more thoroughly, or your child doesn't understand it, and then he moves on to the next learning, and there's a disconnect because the very next following learning. In other words, sometimes to go one step further, you have to learn the first step well enough before you're able to move, to add to the bricks. Okay, before you're able to add to the bricks of learning and learn more. Okay, but if you haven't built the prior step properly, your bricks are bound to come crashing down. So we call that a learning gap. So if there's a learning gap, situation, and that schools have a way of, they have to run the curriculum, they have to run the scheme of work, they have to continue. Yeah, they just have to continue, and they're not going to wait for anybody with learning gaps. If you haven't learned it too bad, if you have not learned it too bad, and they just move on. So if you have a learning gap situation, or you have a situation of intervention, for instance, if you have a learning gap situation becomes a point of intervention. That means that you need to intervene, and work to help this child bridge those gaps, to close those gaps. Yeah, close those gaps. At such times like that, you don't have a choice but to, or I don't have a choice. I'm going to say you don't. I don't have a choice but to pull my child out to administer intervention and close those gaps. So an intervention is pretty much, deals with, a lot of other things. It's just a question of from the word intervene. There's a problem. It may be an emotional situation. There's a child I used to know in primary 5 who could not. She was in this particular school. She did nursery school. She went through nursery school, primary 1, 2, 3, 4, up to primary 5, and she still couldn't read. That sort of person, do you continue to leave her? By primary 6, it's an exam class. As a matter of fact, the exam class, some people start writing those exams by grade 5 already. So by grade 6, it's already late. What that should have done with that child is that child should have been pulled out for learning intervention to take place. Should have been pulled out so they can teach the child to learn, to read over time, intensively over time. Yes, but that wasn't done. So there's so many other stories. Sometimes say, so should the child repeat the class or not? Sometimes, some schools will insist repeat. Some schools will say don't repeat, let the child keep moving. But the child needs to repeat. What do you do? Okay. Okay. There's also a student I know who was a pre-degree student in a particular school, and he did not. He failed GCE, but and he was supposed to write GCSE. He failed. Not that he failed GCE. He passed GCE, but by the time he got to his pre-degree school where he was preparing for GCSE, they discovered he didn't know anything. So apparently he had copied or he had cheated, at his GCE exams. So but what could they do? So what the teachers did was to pull the child out of regular classes and teach the child intensively away from what the school was learning, what his peers were learning at the time. Then when they were done, they put him back into school. Yeah, he joined the system, back in, and then he ended up doing well. But if they hadn't done that intervention, that child wouldn't have done well. So you see very many reasons why we do what we do. So I would love for you to, at this point, just begin to put together what your own whys are. Intervention in Finland. We know that Finland is one place, is a country that the whole world envies, their education practices for very many reasons. You can also watch this Finland. You can also watch this YouTube video. Look for videos on Finland and find out what it is about their practices that makes it stellar. The major thing I would talk about here about the practices and interventions. It is said that every Finland child has been through intervention at one point or the other. Every Finland child. In other words, that's how closely they work with each child to identify any single problem and begin to work to deal with it. In order to take it out, not in order to oust it from the child's life. From the child's person, to nurture that child in order to take away anything that could hinder learning. They say every child in Finland goes through intervention at one point or the other, has gone through intervention at one point or the other. So you can imagine that is pretty much homeschooling. Over here, you can't really have that with the way our system runs. Even elsewhere, all over the world, these issues are everywhere. Okay, so yes, I'd like to. Yeah, I'm speaking here. So the concept of give to get. When it comes to marriage, when it comes to marriage, usually we've been taught that before now. We heard that it takes two to make a marriage work. But I tell you that it doesn't. So if you're at that place where you're wondering why doesn't he, why doesn't she, it doesn't take two. It takes one willing person. The principle is a give and get, give and take, give to get. The principle is the give to get principle, the sowing and reaping principle. The sowing and reaping principle. It's the duty and gift of nurture. We women, especially us women, everybody nurtures really. Love is everybody's responsibility. It's the man's responsibility as well as it is the woman's responsibility. Respect is the man's responsibility as well as it's the woman's responsibility. Okay, submission is the man's responsibility as well as the woman's responsibility. But you see, to nurture a person, when we speak of nurture, we're not just nurturing. As families, it's such a, the world is not the way it was meant to be. And the maker of all things has put us here, to in our different respects to see that we do things right, to see that we nurture the world that he has given us, like a garden. Your home is your garden. To nurture the home that he's given you. That home, we pray for marriage and we get married. You know, it's a responsibility. It doesn't end. You don't come into marriage thinking, oh, I know how to handle. You have to keep searching, keep seeking to know, keep seeking to understand, keep being intentional. Oh, something rears its head. You begin to ask yourself, just the same way you would with your child. How would you, with your child, just because he's a member of your family and it's your responsibility. The same way, your husband is your family and he's your responsibility. How do your wife is your family and she's your responsibility? How do I deal with this? How do I go about this? And be careful not to speak to the wrong people. You know, be careful not to speak to the wrong people. Bear in mind that at the end of the day, you're together. You know, at the end of the day, you're together. So it doesn't take one. It doesn't take. Two. Like you say, it's one person who gives, and then eventually the other person. It's called unconditional love. You know, that's what we have for our children. That's what we have for our spouses. Yeah, it's called unconditional love. You give it, you sow it, and then eventually the other person turns around and begins to see it, and then together you work together. Yes. Quickly, I have to run. It's almost okay. That brings us to certain resources. I spoke just here. I have certain resources I think we should look out for. As we're doing intentional parenting, you know, let's also do intentional marriage. Because our point, what we're trying to do is create a conducive home environment for our children, for our husbands, and for ourselves. So where we can thrive, where everyone together can thrive. So these are some books I recommend. I would recommend The 5 Love Languages. This has helped me much with my children. Also, Love and Respect has helped me much with my children, especially with the boys. You know, especially with the boys, because you see, there's a way boys, receive, receive information. There's a way boys understand life. There's a way boys see life, and there's a way boys interpret life. If you don't understand, if you don't get into their mind, you know, like they say, connect, correct? If you don't get into their mind, you will not understand how to go. So this book has worked for me. These books have worked for me with both my husband and my children. I recommend them for you as well. Then The Surrendered Wife. The Surrendered Wife, don't take it the way you see it. The Surrendered Wife is a very powerful woman who learned that, you know, there's a lot of power, you know, given to you. There's a lot of power you get by surrendering, you know, and there's a way to surrender. There's a way to surrender with dignity. You know, it's a book that will teach you much. Then The Marriage Covenant, by Derek Prince, lovely book. Lovely book. You should read it to begin to understand the spiritual connotations of the covenant of marriage, you know, and how to go. It will help you understand how to go. Then Spirit Control Temperament, which is a book that was very popular at some point in Nigeria. You know, you should also pick it up and dust stuff and look at it. That would be very nice. That would be very nice. Then at the end of the day, we're living and doing life together. What we're talking about with homeschooling and all whatnot is, let us live and do life together. Let us live and do life together. Let us live and do life together. Yeah, let us live and do life together. So I'll come right back. Yeah. Hello. Okay. So eventually we're saying, let us live. We just have 1 hour. Let's do life together. Both husband, wife, and children. All together, you know, provide a nurturing environment that the children can thrive. You can thrive, you know, at business or at whatever it is that you want to do. Your husband can thrive. Everybody can thrive together. So basically, those are. We've had that, you know, high school sweetheart better when they marry. Their family friends do better when they marry. Their best friends do better when they marry. Yeah, that you know, sometimes they say compatible people. You have to be compatible to have a good marriage. Some other times they say you have to be opposites to have a good marriage. All of that is a lie. Because I've seen high school sweethearts who got married and had a bad marriage. I've seen family friends who got married, had a bad best friends. I've seen compatible who got married, had a bad marriage. Opposites who got married and had a bad marriage. So what does it mean? It's an intentional process. You have to continue. I read so many books before I got married. I'm equipped now. No, because you don't do that with your children. With your children, they show you different things every day, and you go back to begin to find out how to deal with it. The same way with your husband. Let's be intentional with our spouses, you know, to reap the juice that God has in store, you know, for marriage. You know, here we're talking love for our children. Love conquers all. No power under heaven is as powerful as the power of love. And love is what is going to see you through. Love for your children, love, let the home be that place of love. Love for your children, love for your home, love for your husband, love for your wife. We must have the right attitude. Come to marriage, come to parenting with the right attitude. When you have the right attitude, it's easier for you to learn. When you have the right, somebody said to me once, I can only invest in somebody's business if I understand the business. Or no, not invest. I can only sow a seed. I can only help someone in their business if I understand the business. This is not an investment opportunity now. I can only, help you. Oh, okay. I can only help you at business. I mean, in your business. Maybe give you a token to help you in your business. I can only help you if I understand the business. Now, that is not love. Love is, oh, I'm willing to give you a chance. Oh, I want to understand you better. Oh, make me understand you better. I'm willing to give you a chance. I want to trust you. That's love. That's love. And as I say this, that's how we should carry on with our children. That's how we should carry on with our husbands. Do not make a mistake about it. Our husbands are not our children. Far from it. Far from it. The only thing is that we nurture. We're in the place of nurture. Even the husband nurtures the wife. We're in the place. But if you're having a problem with the man not nurturing yet, don't wait for that. You be the one to show the nurture. You be the one to show the love. And eventually, you will be. Eventually, human nature has been studied. Human nature has been studied. Yes, and we've come out with so and so, and this is human nature. If you give, unless you married a crazy man or a crazy woman, we just talked about high school sweethearts and all of that, family friends, who at the time of marriage, everything, this person is all right, this person is sane, this person is normal, and then you marry him, and all of a sudden things start to go wrong. Has he changed? There's just something we're not doing right. And remember, it's all about your home environment. If it doesn't go well on that front, it's not well with our children, not with their minds, not with their hearts, not with whatever it is we're striving, to achieve with them. Yes? Not then. I like to also talk on helicopter parenting. We have helicopter parenting. That's what the arguments they give against children, against parents, against homeschooling parents. They say we are helicopter parents. We hover over our children. It will pay us not to sweep that under the carpet. There is such a thing as helicopter parenting. You can overdo it. There is such a thing as helicopter parenting. In our helicopter parenting, in our parenting, we also have to learn to give our children responsibilities and watch them, and just watch them from far. And start to give them little bits of responsibilities and watch them from far. From watching them from far, let them let them go a little bit and watch and see how they go. Without hovering over them. That is one thing I wanted to touch on. So I've touched on that. Can anybody please share with us their wives as we close? I have about 7 minutes left. Yes, Brita, nice. I can't wait to hear you, Brita Forikuragu. I can't wait to hear you. I know you're coming on later on. I can't wait to hear you. Oh, Pambani Hill. I have a friend who's American. She said to me, oh, Ndidi, I've heard so much I have Pambani Hill's books. I follow her all the time, but I don't know her personally. But oh my goodness, you mean you're having her in she's American? And I'm like, oh, we're bringing, she's coming on board. On board our homeschool, on our homeschool Africa convention. That's awesome. That's awesome. So if people in America, people in her home place are looking forward to hear her, we just better look forward. We just better come, make sure we don't miss that. Yeah, Rita, what's your why, Rita?
Well, my why, you've put me on the spot. My why when it comes to homeschooling is to make sure that my children get the support they actually need so that they can thrive.
They can thrive.
Because obviously, so there are various things that go on there.
Wow.
Wow. In the confines of
wow.
You can absolutely provide the environment they need for them to thrive. So for me, it is equipping them with all the skills they need to be able to thrive now and in the future as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I say to I say to people that you're the greatest resource your child can have, because you're so intellectual, you have all this education, you have all these skills, you have all these abilities, then you throw your child off to somebody who's not as gifted or as equipped. Okay, especially the teachers we have over here, not all of them, not all of them are skillful. Yeah, so that just means you're going to get not as much as you would get if it was you doing it. So you're all of that. If there's one gift I'd like to give my children is me, and their daddy feels the same way. If there's one gift you'd like to give his children is him. So we give them all the time, all the attention. They ask all those crazy questions, we take our time to answer. That's being intentional. That's being intentional. So yeah, I see people who are skilled in all manner of vocations, and they don't teach their children. It'd be nice if your children were to have that, as an addition to all their learning. Yes, I think pretty much I have. Anybody else? Inni Oluwa, can you please tell me what your why is? Can you tell us what your why, please?
Hello,
Yeah,
good
your
morning,
why,
everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
absolutely.
you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
I can hear you. Yes. Go ahead. I can hear you.
Okay. I believe our children came with so much goodness from God, and we have to be deliberate in ensuring that these things the good things they are made with are not tampered with. They need a very a prepared environment. I'd
Wow.
tried sending my children to school. And in fact, I'm just beginning to embrace homeschooling. And like I told Z, I said I could really see the difference. Things I have not seen in them. This lockdown had really opened my eyes to it. So I believe it's the way to go. I believe it's the way to go.
Wow. I agree with you. I remember when I was teaching in regular school, I had a bit of an experience where this young girl, this little girl, she was an awesome actress. Awesome. I had to teach her, presentations, So I used to take presentations at school. So, I was taking her presentation. I mean, if this child took the stage, if she took to the stage, she would, if somebody forgot their lines, she would act the part in such a way that to cover up. Yeah, I mean, she was just an awesome. Her diction was excellent. Everything was excellent. But guess what? The management said we couldn't use her. I asked them why. They said it's getting to her head. They said it's getting to her head. They'd rather use someone who's less talented. They don't want it to get her head. And this girl is a very humble girl. So I don't know where they get the getting to her head thing. Perhaps they have a problem with her parents, or they have a history. I don't know, because I couldn't place it. So I had a problem with communicating to the child. I mean, we're making audios, audio books. We're making audio books. Our audio books were excellent, but they clamp down on all that. That's what a school can do. Clamp down on talents, because you said something about being deliberate, so that nothing hampers with what they're birthed with. So I totally agree with you. Why is Moyi? Okay, Moyi can't. I don't think she can hear me. Victoria Okoye, can you share with us your whys, please? One why.
So, good. Hello, everybody. For me, it's the fact that I want them to have what we have. I think that
absolutely
this journey to know God is something that we should transfer to our children. My children are between the ages of 1 and 6, and I do not see the rush in putting them in an environment where someone else or different people who haven't even figured out their lives are telling them what they should be. So for me, I want them where they will hear the truth of what God said they are until it becomes the voice in their spirit. Then they will be strong enough to tell others that this is who I am. That's my why.
Wow. You know, we talk about know yourself. That's a major thing in homeschooling. That's a major thing we spout. You know, the children should know themselves so they can stand against, you know, anything out there. They know yourself and be comfortable in your own skin, in who you are. You know, that's one. And then I'm waiting for Z to come right back so that we can round up. You know, but while let's just keep talking. You know, when you say your children are 1 to 6, you know, you don't think they are ready. There's such a thing as readiness. Is a child ready? There are certain things that, you know, for a child to go to school, the child has to be ready to sit still, sit with their back against a chair, you know, for long periods of time. Is that child ready for that? You know, is the child ready to hold a pen? Is the child ready to communicate the issues, the problems that they're having, in case they have a problem with,
Actually,
in case they have a
been
problem with another child, you know, is the child,
yes, they've actually
exactly.
been in
You know, so
school
there's so many
before,
things involved in. Okay, they've been in school. Okay, I just wanted to touch on this. I mean, you must have had certain experiences before you decided to draw them. Aha. So there's such a thing as school readiness. You know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share in Z's group, the train up group, I'm going to share some materials. You know, I'm going to do a series of materials, you know, along all these lines, the things that we've talked about, things I've shared in the past. I will just share in the group so that, including some of these videos we're talking about, so that we can have access to them. Yeah, so there's such a thing as school readiness. You know, is your child ready, you know, to pay attention for, you know, protracted periods of time? You know, is it for sport? You know, different sports of learning. Is the child ready? You need to be able to ascertain by yourself at home if your child is ready to deal with that. If not, you're putting the child under undue pressure. Now, you know, usually they would say, take them to school. You know, abroad, you know, elsewhere outside of our shores, we know that, you know, there's so much that they do with children at that age. Over here in Nigeria, children go to school and they're forced to write 1 to 100, 1 to do that first. All they know is academia. All they give them, not all schools, but most schools, all they give them is academia, even when you're paying so much, you know. So if you have that sort of situation, you know, if you have that sort of, is your child ready for that? Your child is certainly not ready for that. And what you're doing is, you know, there's such a thing to say, it's said that when a child is ready for a certain kind of learning, let's say a child begins to show interest in music and wants to play the piano, you know, you should pick that and teach that child that. If not, the neural schemas in the child's brain that makes the child want to do that die off. And then the child loses. Eventually, you see a child who had an interest in a certain thing not being able to pick it up again. You know, so if we see children who, our children are so academic in time, but we don't fly rockets. Yeah, why don't you fly rockets? You know, why don't you fly rockets? We're not in the mainstream of, most of the time we see us, we're professors teaching in the universities, you know, but to champion the major things of this earth, yeah, to champion some things, you know, we're not really, even if we are, those of us who are got their training not here, if you research it, those Chimamanda Adichie was such a great writer, her training was her writing skills, she didn't pick them up here. Their writing, I did a research. She got her writing skills, her style, her methods, you know, of putting her stuff together so she can make a bestseller. Not here, not from the shores. Okay, so you see, those are some of the things we have to do. We're dealing with all our academics early on in life. How far has it taken us? You know, how far has it taken us? So the ones who take their time and learn to play, and learn to manipulate materials, and learn critical reasoning, and learn some basic, instead of actual academia, you know, may not know how to write 1 to 100 at 3-year-old, but in time, when they start to learn, they learn fast, they pick things up fast, they understand concepts fast. Yeah. So let's see, is Z here now? We're wondering, has Z arrived? Okay, Z. Okay, Z, please let me know when you've arrived so we can, you know, end my session. And,
yes, I'm here.
Aha.
Okay.
Aha.
Back
So,
end duty.
basically, yeah, it's okay. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I could have, you know, listened to everyone else. I had a few friends who were supposed to come on. I don't know if they're here. I wish I could have listened to everybody else's wise, but I hope that I've been a blessing here today. Looking forward to everybody else, impacting all of us. We're looking forward to so much, so much, so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was a nice time. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you so much. Ndidi, sorry, you have a question.
Yep.
I don't know whether you treated it. Somebody asked,
Okay.
do you have a curriculum?
That's another thing. We have, there are different curriculums. Z can give you some of the curriculums she uses. But you see, when it comes to curriculum, it depends on the point at which you are. What I did with mine is I went to certain schools. I went to certain schools, and I pick out the text they use, because their text pretty much, is around their curriculum, So I pick especially the schools where I taught. So the text pretty much is around a particular. That's what I use. Aside from that, when I go to a bookshop, and I see a book I like, maybe with projects that I think would be informative for my children, would be helpful for my children's learning and understanding, I pick it up and I deal with it. Let me give an example. When my daughter, there was a teacher my daughter had, that I loved so much. She taught her fine art. I think it was a coloring book. So there was supposed to color the book, and all of that from beginning to end. From coloring book, she turned it to drawing assignments. So she would ask them to draw the pages, to draw the pictures on each of the pages. Then she started, in other words, she handled this book thoroughly. If you pick up a damn good book and you handle it thoroughly, pick up the next damn good book and you handle it thoroughly, you're giving your child a wonderful education. Well, you see, I can give you a Montessori curriculum, if you like, a Montessori scheme. I also consult that, every now and then. Z can give you some of the, several curriculums. She has, several alternatives of curriculum that she uses. But aside from that, you can start from somewhere. Then while we talk about the curriculum, or the curricula. Have I answered the question, Z?
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for this session. I am so happy. Ejiro will talk back end later. So thank you so much for coming. The next is going to be testimonials. So we are going to have two amazing ladies give their testimonials. But first of all, we are going to have to go out so that on YouTube we can have these videos separated. So we are going to go back and we are going to come back in immediately for the testimonials. Yes, we are going to come in by 11:22 for the testimonials. All right. And after testimonials, we'll be having Blessing 40K. And after that, we're having Debbie Paul. Okay, bye, and thank you for this session.